Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Crapo, for holding this hearing, and thank you all for being here. So I want to go back to something I asked about in the January hearing that we had on MAP-21, and that is about how Congress has said in the program to distribute the money. And as we know, there are two ways that the money can be distributed. Part of it can be distributed through a very fixed formula. It goes so much to states and so much to localities by a set formula. And then part of it is potentially left to the discretion of the FTA so that a locality or a state can bid competitively in order to be able to do that in that process. And that historically, the money has been divided about 80-20. That is, that 80 goes to a fixed formula and about 20 goes to discretionary spending. But that under MAP-21, we switched over to 91% goes by formula and there's only 8% left for discretionary spending. And that means very clearly in the last authorization, we moved away from more discretion. So in the January hearing, I asked the Federal Transit Administrator, Reauth, about whether the sharp decrease in discretionary funding had an impact. And what he pointed out is that it made it much more difficult for transit agencies and particularly for bus operators to take on big projects like constructing new maintenance facilities. So I just wanted to go down the panel, if I could here, and see if I could get some kind of quick answer about whether you think the decrease in discretionary funding as a proportion of MAP-21 has made it harder for state and local agencies to make the necessary large dollar investments that they need to make. And I thought I might start with you, Mr. Melaniphy.
Thank you, Senator. I think it's a two-part answer. First, we must restore historic funding levels of having a good balance in the bus facilities program in relation to new starts and state of good repair for rail. So having good funding levels and all those is certainly important. Then having the ability to meet those one-time needs. You may only build a new garage every 40 years or something, or replace vehicles every 10, 12, 15 years, but to be able to meet those lumpy needs, you need to have that discretion that a firm of the program just doesn't address in a nice, clean, equitable way.
Good. Ms. Cline, could you add to that, please?
Yes. We were not in favor, of course, of the cut, but an example in case is that in South Dakota currently, of the 24 vehicles that were requested this year, we were able to award 8 vehicle replacement bids. So it's a serious situation.
Thank you. And Mr. Hanley?
I think discretion can be a good thing, but also that the federal government needs to establish some standard for what the return on investment is for these local agencies. I could give you some very annoying facts about the way in which some agencies, particularly in New York, have spent their capital funds, spending huge amounts of money that will serve very few people. So I do think that there has to be some analysis of how that comes out on the other end, although generally, as a rule, I would say discretion for local agencies to figure these things out is a good thing.
Well, I appreciate it, and I think that's actually a very good point about what kind of constraints you want to put in this. We all want to spend our federal dollars in the most effective way possible, and I'm just concerned about the move to formulaic funding and hope that this is one of the things we'll think about as we talk about the reauthorization of MAP-21, how the dollars are divided up. But now I want to go to the point you were raising, and that is how many dollars we put into this system. As you know, infrastructure investment creates jobs both in the short term and in the long term. In Massachusetts, across the country, we have roads and bridges that are in need of repair. We have rail and mass transit expansion projects that would allow businesses to grow. We do a good job of identifying our transportation needs, but that's only half the equation. The second is how we pay for infrastructure repairs and upgrades. So when MAP-21 was enacted last July, it was partially funded by increasing the PBGC pension insurance premiums by 40% over 2 years and through pension smoothing, which allows companies to contribute less to the pension funds now but can leave those plans underfunded in the future. this raises money in a 10-year budget window, but ultimately it means that retirees and future retirees will potentially be on the hook here. Investing in infrastructure is critical to our future, but we shouldn't be doing it on the backs of retirees the way this was funded in the past. The Highway Trust Fund has been funding critical projects for over half a century by taxing gasoline and diesel fuel. But now we're facing a serious dilemma. The trust fund is nearly empty. Increasing fuel efficiency means that we're bringing in less revenue. So we all have the same concerns about rail and mass transit. Raising ticket prices means that we'll end up funding the system on the backs of those who have fixed incomes, retirees who have to rely on mass transit. So what I really want to bring this down to is where we're going to get the money. When Congress says no more spending no matter what, even on important things like mass transit, like roads and bridges, what they're really saying is they'd rather preserve tax loopholes that primarily benefit a few people rather than make the investment in infrastructure that benefits the whole economy. So I see that I'm out of time, and I will just simply ask the question, if you could answer very briefly, you could probably give this a yes or no. Are we underinvesting in our mass transit and our infrastructure spending? And I'll start the other way. Mr. Hanley?
Outrageously so, particularly in light of what I have pointed out about young people in America and the growing population of our cities.
Thank you.
Definitely.
That's strong.
Absolutely. We need it for global competitiveness. We must invest.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for running over.